Well, howdy everyone, and today I'm looking at one of the cheapest kit lenses for the Fuji X system, the Fuji 16 to 50mm f3.5 to 5.6 XC OIS. This lens is only for Fuji X mirrorless cameras, where it's obviously the zoomable kit lens for budget-conscious photographers. It comes in silver or black, and there's also a Mark II version of the lens available, with very minor differences in build quality, being able to focus a little closer, apparently. Its zoom range starts at a decently wide angle of 16mm, much more useful than 18mm if you ask me, and zooms in to a short telephoto focal length of 50mm. That's the full frame equivalent of a 24 to 75mm lens. A useful, if unambitious, zoom range. The aperture starts as wide as f3.5 at the widest angle, and darkens to a narrow f5.6 as you zoom in, so this is not the ideal lens for getting out of focus backgrounds or shooting in the dark. However, the lens does have image stabilization to help you get sharper pictures and smoother handheld video footage. It works silently too. Let's take a look now at the lens's build quality. It's an inexpensive lens, and that's exactly how it feels. The lens is made of plastics, it's nice and light, but you can feel parts rattling inside it as it moves, which is pretty cheap. It has a 58mm filter thread. The lens's zoom ring turns firmly enough, but it's not very smooth at all, and it tends to stick very slightly. The manual focus ring, like on all Fuji lenses, works electronically when the camera is turned on. It turns fairly smoothly, but the electronic system is not particularly responsive, an issue I've found with most Fuji lenses. The focus motor is silent, which is good to see, although in video mode the autofocus moves around a bit uncertainly. Overall, the build quality of this lens is generally a bit poor, but it does at least function well enough. Okay then, let's hear about image quality. I'll be testing on a 24 megapixel Fuji X-T2. At 16mm and f3.5, the lens is fantastically sharp in the middle of your images. As you might expect with a kit lens, the corners are much softer, with some visible purple chromatic aberration, although they're not too disastrous. Stop down to f5.6 and the image is cleaner but not much sharper. At f8, however, there is good resolution. At f11, diffraction is kicking in slightly and the picture is getting a touch softer, so the sweet spot at 16mm is definitely f8. Let's zoom in halfway then to 28mm. The maximum aperture is now f4.5. Here, in the middle of the image, it's nicely sharp, with a tiny bit less contrast than at 16mm. The corners, again, slightly soft, but not too bad overall. There's not much difference at f5.6 or at f8, things are just averagely good here. Finally, we'll zoom into 50mm. At a maximum aperture of f5.6, again, the middle is nice and sharp, and the corners are a bit soft. There's a small improvement though if you stop down to f8. So there's a pretty obvious pattern emerging across the zoom range. It's always sharp in the middle and a little soft in the corners. The lens's sweet spot is f8. Let's see then about close-up image quality. The lens is able to get fairly close to your subject, about 30cm, where picture quality remains quite sharp, even at f5.6. When it comes to working against bright lights, this lens struggles. We see loss of contrast and some soft flaring. Use a lens hood whenever you can. Let's take a look at this lens's bokeh. It's not very easy to get an out of focus background because of the narrow maximum aperture, and of course we're working on aps-c. But the quality of those out of focus backgrounds is generally okay, generally smooth, but in some situations it seems to get slightly busy. Overall, in terms of its optics, this is an averagely good kit lens. It can get pretty sharp pictures when its aperture is topped down a bit, and it has a nice zoom range, starting at that much nicer wide angle of 16mm. The lens's build quality is pretty subpar, especially for a Fuji system lens, so hopefully they will tighten things up a little in the future with their XC lenses. Still, as I say, a good enough little kit lens.